Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope my wellness warriors are doing amazing this morning. Some of you are just getting started. Some of you have been at it a while already, but no matter what, here, I'm still making adjustments. Sorry. No matter what, I hope you're having or in for an amazing day. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, a runner most of the time. Some of the time, I've been slacking in that department lately, but today is the day that changes. I am a jazzerciser, and I am studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, which makes me a grad school student, and definitely a wellness advocate. I've been on a lifelong journey with what was called functional anxiety and depression. I consider myself to be in recovery, but not recovered. Much like many other types of disorders and I can't find the words this morning. Much like other types of disorders and things of that nature, recovery is generally a better term than recovered because there's always that constant chance of kind of going backwards. Good morning, Eric. Everything just takes daily practice when you're shifting mindsets and when you're shifting habits, beliefs, thought loops, the whole 9 yards. It is a constant daily practice. Some days it seems really easy and other days not so much. Okay, in any case, if you're here, let me know you're here. Sometimes Facebook doesn't show me all the things. So if you comment or question, which I absolutely encourage you to comment, interact. But if I don't acknowledge you, it's because I didn't see you. It's not because I'm ignoring you, and I will respond afterwards. So if you are a regular follower, then I hope you enjoyed last week's video on how not seeing things doesn't mean they're not happening, which was kind of a follow-up to not believing everything you think. And today we're going to talk about something kind of along the same lines. While Wellness Wednesday initially started out talking a lot about health, diet, exercise, a lot of wellness is centered around mindset. And so that's where we end up digging in a lot, is mindset issues. And today will be no different. So today's topic has been on my mind for quite some time. It's been on my list for a while and I just haven't gone there yet. However, recently the book that started this for me resurfaced. And so that told me it was obviously time to talk about it. So we're going to talk about people pleasing today and how people pleasing can actually be self-centered or a little bit on the selfish side, a selfish perspective, if you will. I know right now you're like, what did she just say? Cause I felt the same way. So let's start with, what does it mean to be a people pleaser? Being a people pleaser often looks like trying to keep others happy at the cost of your own needs. It's usually driven by a strong desire for approval and acceptance. The hidden cost of people pleasing is exhaustion, resentment, lack of self-esteem, burnout, difficulty with boundaries. And it often looks like difficulty saying no or worrying about others' opinions excessively. Constantly apologizing, agreeing with things to avoid conflict, and overanalyzing interactions days, weeks, months after they've happened. So you might ask yourself, how can this be self-centered? And I'm going to talk about my discovery in just a little bit here. But it actually can be a self-centered point of view. Now, some would also call it a trauma response, and it is also something that can be a result of conditioning from when we were young. There's lots of different things that can lead to this, but overall, for a lot of us, we think, we believe, and we may have been taught that being humble and being non-confrontational, and I'm not suggesting you should be confrontational, and things like that, putting others before ourselves is the way to go. And when it has the right motivation, it is. It very well can be when your intent is to serve others. But when it comes to your detriment and you do it excessively, then it can definitely be problematic. So how can that be self-centered? Well, this is what it can look like. Because when you're serving and when you are constantly adjusting yourself and your reactions and your responses because of your feelings or because of your fears and not because of the other person. And I'm going to try not to talk in circles here, just to get a response that is comfortable to you, then it's problematic thinking. It feels selfless, but it really boils down to how you are perceived. And what we're doing is we're trying to control how others view us, and not necessarily being true to ourselves. So kindness, you know, that humble serving nature is a genuine desire and choice to serve others, to make others feel good. Versus people pleasing, which is driven by a fear of negative outcomes like being disliked or losing someone's affection. And especially when it's happening at the detriment of our own needs. So, selfish, there's an interesting article I found on LinkedIn, that talks about the definition of selfishness. And I thought I had it open, but now I'm not. So the definition of selfish is concerned excessively or exclusively with oneself, seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being, and generally ends without regard for others. But in this case, that's not the case. In the case of people-pleasing, we often have too much regard for others, where we're elevating everyone else above our own needs, our own wants, our own desires. And our own needs is really the key point there. So how this came about for me was actually this book. It's called Happiness is a Choice. And it's I think on its fourth revision since it was originally published, third or fourth revision since it was originally published. So this version doesn't look, even in the contents, quite like it did when I read it back in 1994, which I think was the newest edition of it at the time. It had just been revised, or the version I was reading was right before the revision. And it's Happiness is a Choice is heavily focused on those experiencing depression. But I was reading it around the time of my divorce, and I was in quite a state. And this was also right around the time that I was initially diagnosed with functional or lifetime, pick a word, stick it in there, anxiety and depression. And what had happened was I had gone to a counseling appointment, and the counselor had said to me, "How long have you been depressed?" And I looked at him like he had 10 heads. And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And so he reframed that, and he said, "Let me try again. When was the last time you remember being genuinely happy that wasn't connected to or surrounded a specific event that caused it?" And at that point, I just started bawling. I mean, it just came out, and it because in that moment, as he was asking the question, I knew that he was right. And functional is the word they use when you've had it for so long, or you've behaved in that way for so long that you think it's part of your personality when it's really not. So that is kind of where it started for me. And then this book was recommended to me. And so I started reading it. I had a job at the time that you may, if you followed me for a while, you may have heard me refer to holding cells, that I consider it to be kind of a holding cell, because it put me in a unique position to be able to deal with all of the emotions and all of the things that were going on that surrounded my divorce and the personal growth that was happening, whether I liked it or not. Good morning, Miss Kayla. So I had time at this job to read this book. And when I first started reading it, a lot of the things that were pointed out, I was like, oh, that's so-and-so. And I was pointing to a lot of other people in my world at the time, or this person is this person, and this person is that person, until I ran across a part of the book that started talking about people pleasing and the type of response, and that it was selfish. And then all of a sudden I was like, ooh, I think this is me. And so that is when the mindset shift really started to happen for me. And it was a really slow process. Now I've searched this book, and as I said, it's been revised and expanded like 3 or 4 times since then. So I was unable to find the specific chapter, passage, whatever that I was looking for. But it's never left me. And I was able to find some other articles when I kind of started poking around. So, again, it's not as, a lot of times, and there are people who genuinely just want to serve others and that's their motivation. But most of the time our motivation also is related to controlling how we're perceived, not wanting to be rejected and not wanting to not be liked. I can remember for quite some time, in one of my jobs, Kayla, I felt attacked myself. In one of my jobs, I caught myself, it was even a couple of years after I had read this book. I caught myself, if somebody came in the door of my work and they weren't smiling, my automatic assumption was that I had done something wrong, was that they were mad at me. And that's, for me, what this looked like was I was constantly striving to make people like me and to make them happy. And my whole identity revolved around whether or not this person that came in the door was smiling, and the assumption of that it was, if they weren't, that it was because of something I did. I might not have seen this person for 3 stinking weeks, but if they walked in the door and they looked like they were having a bad day, I automatically put that on myself. I automatically assumed that was my fault. Now, when I say it that way, you can kind of hear, wow, Donna, it's all about you. And that's really what it boiled down to. So this constant striving to make people happy and these expectations for people to be smiling when they saw me and all of this, they really were all about me. It was all about me feeling like I was accepted and not rejected. And this, and like I said, this can come from a lot of different places. Some people will call it a trauma response. Some people will call it conditioning. As a child, I spent a lot of time bullied. I spent a lot of time not feeling like I fit in. And so over time, I kind of adjusted my personality and the way that I behaved based on the expectations of others, or what I perceived the expectations of others were. So the point here is that it really does boil down to mindset, because what happens is we're assuming others are constantly evaluating us. And they're probably not. A lot of times when I assumed somebody was having a bad day because, I don't know, they saw my face or whatever the case may have been, it had nothing to do with me. And that's where I realized that self-centered perspective really was a thing. It really was a thing. So all this time that I thought that all these things I was doing was to be humble and to be kind and to, when my motivation was really that I didn't want to be rejected. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to fit in, and I wanted everybody to like me. Y'all, I'm going to say this again in a little bit, but we are not pizza. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So we assume that others are constantly evaluating us when they're not. Now, this definitely can be a conditioning thing. This comes from a lifetime of media comparison with other people. Of, like I said, as a child, if you've been bullied or you walked on eggshells, if you've been in an abusive relationship, whether it was as a child or as a significant other, these are the kinds of things that can produce this thinking, because essentially in those spaces, we're taught that we're not good enough. We begin to believe that we're not good enough. And that is when we start modifying our personalities and the way we behave according to whoever we're in front of or whoever is in front of us. And one of the bigger realizations for me was how I acted at home versus how I acted at work. At work, I was somewhat comfortable. After I became somewhat comfortable, because it took me years, and started being more myself, there was an incongruence with how I behaved at home. Because I couldn't, and I knew there was a problem, but I couldn't figure out how to fix it. Because I knew there was a clear incongruence in the way I acted in different situations. Now, let's face it, if you're in the professional world, you're in the customer service business, you can't just always be your authentic self all the time. I have friends that'll tell you that they wouldn't still have jobs if they were. But there should be a certain amount of congruence across the board where you don't feel like you're stepping into a completely different personality just because you're in a different setting. So another thing this can look like is, well, another result of this is that it prevents real connection. Like I just said, where we're stepping into other personalities depending on who's in front of us. and if you swear a lot, it's okay if you're in a professional situation where you can't swear as much, so you curb it a little bit. That's not quite the same as changing your personality, changing your beliefs, and changing the way you behave completely in that situation. So when we do that, it prevents real connection, because we're not being our authentic self, and we start to lose sight of who our authentic self is, and we're not showing up as our real selves. An example that I've used many times in many different situations, but usually in reference to this, because I've briefly touched on people pleasing and trying to control others' perceptions before. But one of the examples I've used, and if you followed me a lot, you've heard this before, is The Runaway Bride. It's a movie I saw years ago. I really need to sit down and rewatch it because I remember almost nothing about it other than the egg scene. And I've talked about this actually pretty recently. And the egg scene was where, this bride, Julia Roberts, kept running away from the altar. She was known for it. So much so that in this movie, the news media was starting to follow her. But it was because she wasn't showing up as her authentic self in her relationships. So she would take on the personality and the beliefs and the likes and the desires of whoever she was with. She really had no idea who she was. And this all kind of came to a head in this egg scene where her friend, because somebody had asked her, how do you like her eggs? And the media kept asking her exes, how does she like her eggs? And they always, the exes always said, well, she likes them the way I do, and would list off the way they liked eggs. And when she was asked, she didn't know, because she always just took on whatever the likes and beliefs and whatever of the person that she was with. Her identity was rotating and centered around whoever she was with, making them happy for fear of losing them. So a friend walks in, or a reporter, or whoever it was, and she's got eggs made 9 ways from Sunday laid out on the counter. And they're like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm trying to figure out how I like my eggs. So this is what happens with us when we're people pleasing, is we absorb, we take on the likes and desires and opinions sometimes of everybody else around us, whether they're congruent with how we really feel and our own beliefs or not. For the sake of not being rejected, fitting in, not losing someone we love, because we fear that if they see the real us, that the real us isn't good enough. So we equate discomfort with rejection. If we're uncomfortable, or if we get a funny look or a side eye because of something we say, that means we're being rejected. And that's not necessarily the case. One of the ways that this shows up is constantly apologizing. And that is always a sign that we are walking on eggshells, that we are afraid to take up space. And we sugarcoat those things. When you're talking to somebody, it can look like, I don't want to be a pain, but, or if we're not sure we can say no, we say we think we have to think about it. Or if we want to do something, or we make a suggestion, we follow it with only if you want to. So we sugarcoat things and we downplay our own desires or our own needs, for the sake of being easygoing, or being well accepted, or not causing a conflict or a confrontation. And again, this can be rooted in things like this. One of the articles I found actually specified, see if any of these things ring a bell for you. Mom/dad/grandma won't like that, so I can't do that. Being told it's not nice to ask, wait your turn, which in of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. But there can be some fine lines when these things are used regularly. When you behave the way someone expects and you're told you're a good girl or boy as a child, or you don't behave the way you're expected and you're told you're a bad boy or girl, instead of just that you made, one of the things that we do with my grandkids is you need to make better choices, not you need to be a good boy or girl, because that can be very seriously internalized as, if I don't do what other people want, then I'm bad. And that's not necessarily the case. So Another one is no one will be your friend if you act like that. This is a place, again, things that I heard as a child, things that friends of mine were told. So this conditioning starts really early on. There's also an article that I ran across where one woman was interviewed. Her name was Amy, and she said that it's especially difficult for women to say no and to draw boundaries because, especially in the older generations, we have been conditioned, she believes we have been conditioned that we're supposed to be helpers. We're supposed to be helpers. We're supposed to be caretakers. Now, it makes sense to me, but I've met plenty of men who are also of the people-pleasing sort. So I don't think it's just that. But we are often conditioned as young women that this is our job, is to be helpers, to be caretakers, and that to be anything else is not acceptable. And we're conditioned as women to not take up space. And if you don't understand what I mean by not taking up space, let me give you a really tiny example. I used to be known, now some of you may have watched, I've mentioned once or twice briefly that I was in foster care as a teenager. Anytime I went to someone else's house, a friend's house, a foster home, even as an adult, if I stayed over at someone's house, and if Eric thinks about it, he can probably vouch for this. I would try to keep my things to a minimum, like in a corner, out of the duffel bag, not try to spread my stuff out too much because I didn't want to be a burden. So that's like almost a literal picture, tangible picture of what not wanting to take up space or being afraid to take up space or not thinking you're worth taking up space can look like if you are constantly cramming yourself into a corner to avoid being in the way, to avoid being a burden, or because you're perceived that you can't take up space or it'll be a problem, if that makes sense. So just in case you needed kind of a visual in this department, that's what that can look like. But all of this can start very early, and it can come from several different places, but it is a mindset issue. So how do we, surprise, surprise, right? So how do we break this cycle? I have 5 mantras here that came from this LinkedIn article I found. And yes, I could have come up, or 4 mantras. Yes, I could have come up with my own. But these kind of seem to summarize things for me in a way that made sense. So hopefully they'll make sense to you. Number 1, I can't live my life avoiding rejection. It is not possible. So in parentheses next to this note, I have, I'm not pizza, ice cream, etc. Insert here. So what do I mean when I say that? It took me a long time to learn. And because my career was so much a part of me, that was kind of where a lot of this learning took place. And it was a hard pill to swallow when all of a sudden one day there was somebody that didn't like me and I just didn't know why because I didn't do anything to them. They just didn't like me. And it drove me crazy. But I'm not pizza. I don't have all the toppings. There's somebody out there that doesn't like pizza, just like there's somebody out there that doesn't like ice cream. We cannot be all the things to all the people. And, we can do whatever we want, whatever we think is possible to avoid rejection, put on a mask, hide our real selves, whatever. But sooner or later, somebody's still not going to like us. And the more inauthentic we become by doing that, the bigger the chances are that people aren't going to like us, but it's going to be for the wrong reasons. So this mantra is, I can't live my life avoiding rejection. It's simply not possible. So you can replace that with, I'm not pizza. I'm not ice cream. We cannot make everyone happy all of the time. It's just not possible. Another one is, it's good to ask for what I want. It's good, not bad, to ask for what I want. An example is a relationship that I was in where that person was very, very connected with their family and did not want to miss a holiday without spending it with their family, which was fine. That's a great quality, except that when it came to my family, it was either I go by myself or I don't go. And it took probably 2 or 3 years before finally one year in Thanksgiving talks, I had to go. And it was so hard, y'all. I had to go, listen, we've spent the last 2 or 3 holidays with your family. I would like to spend time with my family on this holiday. It was hard. I was shaking. My stomach was upset. It felt like confrontation. asking for what I wanted, which was just to put my family first for that one holiday, felt confrontational. It was terrifying to me. And it made no sense. But it was the way I was conditioned, where I just was afraid to take up space. I was afraid to ask for what I wanted. And the response to that was really good. It was like, hey, let's get them all together, because that individual wasn't willing to give up their time with their family, but understood my need to spend mine with my family. So we came up with a solution that worked for everybody for quite a few years. But you should not feel like it's going to be confrontational for you to ask to spend a holiday with somebody different than what you normally do. And that is an excellent example of what I'm talking about when I say it is good, this mantra, it is good, not bad, to ask for what I really want, or ask for something you need. Listen, we've been to 3 events in the community in this last week, and my brain is exhausted. I can't people anymore. I don't want to go. It's okay to say that. You don't have to feel guilty. There's lots of information in this book about guilt, which is a lot of times what lands us where we are. So mantra number 4, I will swap I should. I've talked about shoulding all over ourselves. I will swap I should for I really want. And that's super important, because we should ourselves to death. I should do this. I should do this. I want to do this, but I should be doing this. I probably did it yesterday. I don't feel like doing anything, but I should be doing this, and this. When what I really wanted to do was just kind of sit there. And that's okay. It's okay to take a break once in a while. Again, you've heard me say this before too, as long as we don't wallow in it, right? So swap I should for what I really want, and see how far off those things are. Obviously, if it's job related and you're at work and you're within the normal job hours and you're I shoulding, it's probably something you should be doing, right? You can't just climb under the desk and sit there for a couple hours. Tempting. I know. I've been there. But when we are constantly replacing our wants with what we should or what we think we should be doing, and that's the key, and that's where we go back to those shouldn't always believe the things we think, because we have a way, especially if we're in people-pleasing mode, of convincing ourselves of all of these things that we should be doing, that we need to be doing for other people, and we're not doing for ourselves. Like, maybe I just needed that little bit of break instead of constantly having all these balls in the air. So that's another swap, is I will swap I should for I really want. And then the final mantra for today is, if they don't like the real me, no harm done. It just means you're not compatible. So again, we'll go back to the pizza quote. You're not pizza. Not everybody is going to like you, and that's okay. It is not the end of the world. And it took me a long time to learn that. In fact, most of the time, there are going to be people who just don't like you because whatever, pick a reason. There's absolutely nothing we can do about that. We can't control it. And that's really what a lot of this boils down to, is trying to control how other people perceive us. And that's not ours to do. It's just not ours to do. So that's kind of an overview of how people pleasing can be selfish. So what I would invite you to do this week is, and I mean, we could go on about this for hours. I could talk about all the ways and reasons that I was conditioned this way, but we would literally be here for weeks. So your time is important. I don't want to keep you all day. So let's talk about this. I'm going to challenge you the next time you're doing something that maybe isn't something you want to do or feel like you should be doing. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of genuine care and concern for whoever I'm doing it with, for whoever I'm doing it for? Or am I doing this because I want to avoid discomfort, because I want them to like me? Really sit down and think about your motivation. Am I doing this because I think I have to? Who says that I have to? Is whatever I'm thinking the truth? Like we talked about in the not believing everything you think. And again, here's some more swaps where you can kind of do this during the week. These are some simple things that we kind of run into daily. saying excuse me instead of I'm sorry. I'm very good at that now. Used to be whenever I was in a grocery aisle and had to walk in front of somebody, I'd be like, I'm sorry. I was apologizing all the stinking time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And finally, after a little bit of a period where my anxiety really started to ramp up and I was starting to get road rage in the grocery store, and that's a whole other funny story for another day. But good morning, Miss Dawn. But basically one time my daughter had to be like, Mom, it's time to go, because she could hear my under my breath mutterings getting louder, and she was like, we gotta go. But instead of I'm sorry, just say excuse me. Another example is thanks for inviting me, and leave it at that instead of I'm sorry I can't come because enter excuse here. If we can't do something that we're invited to, we don't have to justify it. That's not a requirement. We don't have to justify it to make sure that the other person understands that it's nothing against them, and it's not that we don't want to, but there's all this other stuff going on and we should be doing this instead. You see, tell me you haven't been there, because I'm pretty sure all of us have at some point in time. So it is okay to say, thanks for inviting me. Instead of, I'm sorry I can't come because. There's not an explanation required. Another one that I've been guilty of many times is getting somewhere and not feeling dressed appropriately. So what do you do in that situation? Most of the time we're like, sorry, I didn't know what to wear. I feel so underdressed. I feel so overdressed. Oh my gosh. When instead we could just say nothing and rock it. It is what it is, right? Because there's nothing that can be done about it at that point. So those are some kind of daily swaps that you can use if you catch yourself doing this pleasing thing where you're doing things that you don't necessarily think you should be doing or want to be doing. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of a genuine care or concern, or am I doing this to avoid discomfort, confrontation, etc.? Because I think you might be surprised at what you find the answers to be. So to wrap up, again, lots of mantras there. I encourage you to go back. If you didn't write those down, there was kind of a lot there. I can't live my life avoiding rejection. It's just not possible. I'm not pizza. I'm not ice cream. It is good, not bad, to ask for what I really want. Demanding is another story. Asking, there's never a problem with. I will swap I should for what I really want, instead of shoulding all over ourselves. And if they don't like the real me, maybe we're just not compatible and it's not the end of the world. Again, I'm not pizza. So again, I challenge you to, if you catch yourself doing this, ask, am I doing this out of genuine care and concern, or am I doing this to avoid discomfort? And then remember these things as you go forward. And yes, like I said, this is something we could expand on for days, but I try not to keep you guys too long. This is designed to be a general overview. If you have questions, anything like that, I encourage you, drop a comment, send me a message. But remember these things as you go forward, having absorbed this today. Not everything is your fault, including and especially someone's mood, someone's failure to smile, whatever. Not everything is your fault. Not everything is about you. And we don't, it's not that we do it on purpose. It's very instinctual. It's very conditioned to just assume that when we're around, everybody should love us and be happy with us. And a lot of times when we see those people that are not smiling or that are kind of like, hey, when you say good morning, it has nothing to do with us. They got something else going on. That was already happening before they hit the door and saw us, most of the time. So remember, we're not constantly being evaluated by other people. So not everything is our fault. Also remember that discomfort does not equal rejection. Does not equal rejection. If we're uncomfortable or they're uncomfortable, it doesn't mean we're being rejected. I can't say that enough. Saying no and setting boundaries is not unkind. It may feel uncomfortable. Saying, I need to spend this holiday with my family this year is going to feel uncomfortable if you're not used to asking for what you want. But it's not bad. It doesn't have to be bad. And it does not, and if we're uncomfortable and we're making them uncomfortable with that request, or we perceive that we're making them uncomfortable, it doesn't mean we're being rejected. They're not mutually exclusive. We can serve others authentically without trying to win their approval. that could possibly be a story for another day too, or a whole separate topic. But we can serve others authentically as our real selves without trying to win approval. It basically, what that means is, if you're not a baker, but you're baking things to try to make other people happy, you're not being your authentic self. What is your talent? What is something you're good at that you can really impact others with? That is your authentic self, and you can serve people that way without everybody having to approve, because again, you're not pizza. And most importantly, this is not an overnight fix. This takes lots of practice. This is not a one and done thing. This is constant retraining, just like everything else mindset related. It's not going to happen overnight. And if it does feel like it happened overnight, it's because it's something you've already been working on, and maybe, just maybe, something I said tipped you over the fence, and you're like, oh, I get it now. And it's probably something you've heard 18,000 times, but you needed that 18,001 for the light bulb to go on. So this is not ever anything that happens overnight. It took you years to become conditioned this way. It took me years to become conditioned this way, and I still catch myself. I think I even apologized at the beginning of the video. So I still find myself over apologizing at times and over explaining at times. So it's not an overnight fix. It takes lots of practice. The first time is the hardest. And that's all I have for you today. So I hope that this gives you, at least made you think and made you kind of look at things. And if this is something you've been finding that you've been doing on a regular basis, that it probably needs, or if you're feeling attacked, like Kayla said she was feeling attacked, then it's probably time to do a little bit of internal reflection. So again, keep in mind the challenge. Let me know how you do. Drop a comment, shoot me a message. And if you have a topic you'd like to see me cover, or something that I have covered that you'd like to see me go into a little more depth about, let me know. Shoot me a message. Again, drop a comment. And most importantly, if you found this helpful, share it so maybe somebody else can find it helpful too. That is all I have today. I will drop a picture of this book in the comments in case you want to go check it out. I think you can get it on Kindle for like $4.99. I don't remember what the paperback version was. I'm probably going to read it again soon, just to kind of refresh my memory, because it has been revised and expanded. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not depressed, I don't need it. If you have high anxiety, as you start to address one, sometimes it's kind of like the judge's scale. One goes up while the other one comes down. So it's still a good read, and there's a little bit of bad anxiety in there too. Okay, I hope you all have a fabulous week. Again, if you found this helpful, please share. And most importantly, until next week, be well. Bye.